Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone joining us here today for the first of our developer preview broadcast, this time for Winter 21. You're joining me today from my home here in Colorado. My name is Heather Storm. I'm a developer program manager here at Salesforce, and I'm your MC for the next hour or so. I'm joined by a set of product managers and engineers who are going to connect with all of you to virtually update you on what is coming with Winter 21. We aren't just here to show you demos, we're also going to answer all of your questions during the last part of our broadcast today. We'll be watching the Release Readiness Trailblazer community group for questions, as well as on Twitter at SalesforceDev with the hashtag SalesforceLive. Before we get into the gist of things, let's quickly visit the forward-looking statement slide. Please make any and all purchasing decisions based on what's currently available on the platform and not any forward-looking statements I or our presenters today may make. Thank you. Today we have a packed agenda. You're going to hear from Neha all about the brand new CLI plugin that will change the way you work with custom metadata. We'll chat with Chris Harrison about some major updates to our APIs, including the newly GA Composite Graph API. Jared Solom, one of our Apex engineers, is going to tell us about some big updates to Apex, including the safe navigation operator and S-object error methods. Finally, Alex will wrap up our feature set and let us know what is new with Flow for developers, including updates to Flow screens and what's new from the community. But that's enough of me for now. I'll see you at the end with all of this amazing content for our Q&A. Neha, it's up to you to take it away and show us that new CLI plugin for custom metadata.
Thank you, Heather. Aloha, everybody from Boulder, Colorado. I'm Neha Ehlawat, and I'm a product manager here at Salesforce, overlooking the custom metadata types area. I'm very excited to show you the latest tooling that we have built for custom metadata types, so let's dive right into it.
Let's learn what custom metadata types are and how you can use our latest feature. Oftentimes, our ISVs, customers, and partners have org-specific or package-specific custom configurations, for example, mappings, business rules, secrets, etc. Now, this is not business data. This is application configuration that needs to be packaged or migrated. Custom metadata types are special objects that are designed to store such app configurations. Now, a customer might say, we can use custom objects or custom settings to store this information. Or in fact, we are already using them. Then why should we use custom metadata types and go through the effort of migrating? Well, custom settings are nothing but custom objects and hence behave like them, which means that their records are data. But like Salesforce standard metadata types, custom metadata types are metadata built by our customers and their records are metadata, which means, like any other metadata type, you can easily move them between environments and still be able to preserve their records that store app configurations and mappings. Let's consider an example. You have a form with housing or locality-related questions that dynamically display based on your location and some other basic information. Now, every org that you package and install these forms in, do you keep remapping these conditions on the forms? Or would you rather have these mappings move along with those forms effortlessly between environments? That's exactly what you can do by using custom metadata types and storing these mappings in its records as metadata. Well, now that we know the records of custom metadata types are metadata, what else makes them special? Let's compare them to what some might think could be the alternatives: custom objects and custom settings. As you can see in the table, custom metadata types can be cached. Therefore, they offer you unlimited calls and querying capabilities. You can perform any of the metadata operations like deploy, retrieve, or package install on custom metadata for obvious reasons. Now, while custom settings allows object-level protection, custom metadata allows you to put restrictions at the record level in addition to the type level. On the other hand, custom objects do not provide any level of protection at all. So, with custom metadata, you get sophisticated protection options for your types as well as the records. Similarly, neither can you set editability for fields on custom objects or settings, nor set audit trails for them. But you can do all of this for custom metadata. You can define relationships to other custom metadata types, custom objects, field definitions, and even entity particles in custom metadata, which you cannot for custom settings. You cannot reference records of custom settings or objects in validation rules, formulas, or flows. Custom metadata even supports additional fields like pick lists and long text areas as compared to objects. So, in a nutshell, all the functionality or features that are really needed for you to customize, configure, or protect your application, they are provided to you by custom metadata types, truly empowering you to build your own platform on top of our Salesforce platform. Moving over to what's new, I am very excited to announce that we have released a CLI plugin for custom metadata types, which is available to you starting CLI version 49. You can now use CLI to programmatically create custom metadata types and manipulate them. So just a few minutes back, we talked about why custom metadata types are so much better than custom settings and why you should be using them instead. Now here is the how part. With the generate command of the plugin we just released, you can switch your existing objects to custom metadata types and migrate all its records in the same transaction to the new type. So one step, one command, and you just migrated from custom settings to custom metadata types without losing any data. Isn't that smooth? Another one of my favorite commands from the plugin is insert. This command lets you bulk insert records from CSV files directly into the custom metadata type from the command line. Now you might say, what about the custom metadata loader? Well, what about it? You could only insert 200 records synchronously at a time via the loader. But through CLI, the same limits apply as that of a regular metadata deploy because you're technically inserting metadata, remember? So you can push up to 10,000 records in a single execution of the insert command. Plus, I do want to point out that custom metadata loader is not a Salesforce supported or maintained tool. CLI is something we own, maintain, and deliver continuous improvement and new features on. Lastly, by using the CLI, you get to enjoy the unified SFDX experience of development, continuous integration, testing, and automation. It gets much more easier to integrate, test, and automate your custom metadata development process with other development work that's going on in your orgs programmatically. Before we move over to the demo, here is a quick glance at the 5 new commands that we have been talking about. Specifics of each of these commands and more details can be found in our help documentation. And without any further delay, let's see all of these commands in action. We are starting with a fresh Scratch org, which means I do not have any custom metadata types in it yet, and I have a custom object with a bunch of fields in it and one record. Now let's generate our first custom metadata right from this object. Now I don't know what flags I need to use with this cmdt generate command, so I will simply type in help to see the documentation on all of them. There are some examples as well to help you get started. Cool. So looks like I just need to supply it with a minimum of new and old types name. And I just converted my custom object into a custom metadata with its record. At least that's what the message says. We will push this into our Scratch org and verify the message. I go to the Scratch org and look for custom metadata types. And I can see the new type called from custom object. Looks like all the fields on the custom object were migrated as well. Now, if I go to the manage option, I can see that we have the record migrated from the object. Pretty neat, isn't it? We can also run a SQL query and verify that the data has been moved over from the custom object as well and is intact. We can also create a brand new custom metadata by using the cmdt create command and add fields to it by using cmdt field create command. Awesome. I'm just going to copy paste a bunch of field create commands here so I can quickly create a lot of fields on this custom metadata. We can also create records via the CLI and push it into the Scratch orgs the exact same way, because guess what? Records are nothing but metadata. I just created 2 records using cmdt record create command, and now let's push it into our Scratch org and see the shape for this new type we just created. Look at that. We have the new type created purely from the command line and its record inserted in the exact same way. But that was one record. Do you expect me to insert 20 records one by one using the above step? Obviously not. So let's bulk insert 20 records from a CSV file to the same custom metadata type and push them. Once the push is complete, we will be able to verify the records in our Scratch org. Look at this. The custom metadata type called new CMDT has 20 records that we just inserted from the CSV file. That was a demo, everyone. All you need to do now is to update the CLI version to 49 and start using these commands right away. But that's not all. Let's see what else is new in Winter 21 apart from the CLI plugin. Like we mentioned before, custom metadata supports relationships to other custom metadata types, custom objects, field definitions, and even entity particles, unlike custom settings. We were already supporting the entity particles of standard compound fields like account, billing address, name, etc. And in the Winter 21 release, we have extended the support to the custom compound field of geolocation. So you can now refer to the latitude and longitude particles of the geolocation field in the entity particle relationships and further customize your app configurations. Now, before I pass it over to the next PM, I want to leave you all with some more good news. On our roadmap is Apex Static Accessors, which aims to bring custom metadata types to parity with custom settings. With this feature, you will be able to use getValues and getAll methods on custom metadata types exactly as you can today on custom settings. It will be a performance improvement on custom metadata types as it will avoid looping over the record results retrieved as a list and instead allow you to directly access them using a key-value pair. And last but not the least, something you all have been asking us for a long time. We will be prioritizing synchronous CRUD for custom metadata types via Apex for one of the upcoming releases. At the moment, we support asynchronous create, delete via Apex Metadata API, but we want to make it better, broader, and synchronous in the coming future.
I hope I left all of you with some exciting stuff to look forward to in the future releases. With this, I will pass it over to Chris Harrison, who has some very exciting API updates.
Thank you, Neha. Hello from the Outer Sunset neighborhood of San Francisco. The Outer Sunset is home to some wonderful shops, restaurants, and surf spots, but it's also been a hotbed of product management activity since March. Well, in my house at least. I'm Chris Harrison, and I'm a product manager with a focus on APIs and data integrations. So let's talk APIs. Salesforce, as we all know, is an API-first organization, and the company's extensive data and domain capabilities are expressed through many API families, some of which are mentioned here. My product team is responsible for the SOAP, REST, and bulk APIs on the Salesforce platform that enable programmatic access to core data. And we're shipping some fantastic capabilities in the Winter 21 release. Within the REST API, there are over 47 top-level resources. That is a lot. One of my favorites is Composite, and it's been available since the summer 15 release. Over the years, we've added additional composite capabilities to this REST API. And now, over 5 years after the initial launch of Composite, I'm happy to announce that the newest member of the family, the Graph resource, is generally available in Winter 21. The Composite Graph API is purpose-built for the optimal processing of CRUD operations on related S objects. By leveraging the power of collation, which is a feature we introduced in the Spring 20 release, this API extends the reach of standard composite requests by allowing you to assemble more complicated and complete graphs of related records. And in so doing, further cut down on the number of API requests that are required to get more work done, which is a key theme that drives our API investments. The scope of HTTP verbs and SObjects resources supported in the subrequests you can submit to the Composite Graph API enables the retrieval, creation, updating, upserting, and deletion of records. Up to 500 subrequests that are organized into graphs of related SObjects resources can be processed in a single API call. That's a lot. The API executes graphs of records with all or none enabled and ensures the complete processing or complete rollback of the transactions on the client's behalf. By enabling all this capability in a single API request, we offload the complex business logic required to manage record relationships and orchestrate the workflow from your code to the Salesforce platform. This new API is a great tool to wield when you're working with graphs of records that are both broad and deep in their relationships with each other, like, say, a complex catalog of product data or an e-commerce order with lots of line items, contact information, promos, payment information, or really anything else your data modeling team can conjure up. Let's see it in action. The surf business I kicked off at TDX earlier this year has really taken off, and the Composite Graph API has been a key enabler to efficiently get the records that drive this enterprise into Salesforce. Here's the core of the data model, which is focused on a surfboard style that's available in one or more color variations. Each of those colors are available in one or more size option. It's this size object where the price of the board is stored. I already used the Composite Graph API earlier this summer to get a number of these complex surf SKUs into my org. And now I need to continue to get more surfboard style, color, size records into Salesforce as I expand my product offerings. Here's a graph payload of 2 more surfboards and their related style colors and sizes that I've already built out. Make note of the reference ID field that will be used to establish parent-child relationships with other nodes in the graph. When a record is created or updated in the graph, I'll be able to make use of it in other sub-requests within that same graph. Let's go into Postman and submit this graph payload to the server. And now let's take a look at the response. Oh, one of my graphs succeeded, but the other did not. There must have been an issue with one of the sub-requests of that graph. Thanks to all or none for rolling it back, so now I won't have any gnarly broken surfboard graphs in my data. Here's my problem. There's an extra C in the object name of one of the sub-requests. Back in the Salesforce UI, you can see only one new surfboard record was created, and there's no trace of the surfboard graph of records that featured a typo. So there was only one sub-request that was a problem, but the entire graph was rolled back. So there's no dirty data in that graph. As you can see, the Composite Graph API is a powerful REST resource that will help you manage complex data on the Salesforce platform. We'll be looking to increase the reach of these capabilities in a future release, most notably with submitting a much larger payload of graphs asynchronously by way of the Bulk API 2.0. Speaking of Bulk API 2.0, we're shipping some new features and bug fixes in Winter 21 that will greatly improve the experience of managing large-scale data operations, notably support for hard deletes and querying of big objects. We're also piloting an initial Open API specification that describes 4 of our most key S-Objects REST resources behave. How do you pilot an API spec, you might be wondering? We'll let your account team know if you'd like to find out. In addition to shipping new features, we're working with the Trailhead team to add more content that helps you make the most of the platform's extensive API capabilities. Check out this latest badge that launched over the summer and look ahead to more Trailhead content in the future. And if you haven't already, start your preparations for the end of life of API versions 7 through 20, which will be happening in the Summer 21 release next year. As you can see, the latest and greatest version of the API that ships with every major release is jam-packed with some awesome new capabilities, so be sure to take advantage. And that's a wrap on the Winter 21 API highlights. I'd like to now make a call out to Jared, who's going to talk to you about what's new and notable in the world of Apex.
Thank you, Chris. I'm Jared Sulam, a lead developer on the Apex team, and I'm delighted to be here today to demo 2 new features we've added to the Apex language in this release. But first, a couple of words about the Apex language. It's the most powerful way we have of allowing you to customize Salesforce's generic platform into a platform that really fits your business needs. For example, you could write an Apex trigger to validate data that's entered into the system to make sure it's correct. And we'll be coming back to that example later on in the demo. So let's see what we've added to this release. The Winter 21 release let us improve Apex in a number of ways, but today I'm going to focus on just 2 of them. The first is a safe navigation operator that will help you reduce boilerplate code. And the second is a number of improvements we're making to the S-Object error methods. These are the methods that you use to report validation issues to users during record save operations. All these improvements will help you almost every time you write new code. Now let's jump straight into the safe navigation operator. When writing Apex, there are many times you have to deal with missing values, a SQL query that returns no results, or a method parameter with a null value. We have to check these scenarios, but this leads to boilerplate code that distracts us from the main task at hand. The safe navigation operator allows us to reduce the boilerplate. It works in the same way as the operator in C# and JavaScript. And here's what it looks like. It can be used in any place where a dot operator is used to call a method or access a property. And works in the same way as a dot, but it has one special behavior. If the left side of the operator is null, then instead of getting a null pointer exception, the rest of the chain is skipped, and a null is returned. This means you can avoid explicitly checking for nulls and instead depend on the safe navigation operator. Let's see it in action. To set the scene, let's imagine we are Salesforce developers at an e-commerce company whose product catalog is generated from data in Salesforce. The catalog contains links to external resources such as a product image. When we come into work on Monday, we find an urgent security request in our inbox. The company is transitioning to HTTPS everywhere and needs all URLs to be secure, including these images. Our first task is to deploy a hotfix to production so that when the catalog is retrieved, all URLs are converted to secure URLs on the fly. So here's a utility function we might have written before we had safe navigation. This function takes a product ID and returns a secured version of the product's image URL. And it works by selecting the product row using the product ID, getting the display URL, and then converting all references from HTTP to HTTPS and returning the secured URL. To do that, though, it has to deal with a couple of distractions. The first is that it has to check if any rows were returned from the SQL query to avoid a query exception if no rows were returned. And the second is that it has to check whether the display URL is null or not. In both of these exceptional cases, we decide to return a null, as there is no product image URL. So this function requires 8 lines, and most of these are spent handling exceptional conditions instead of dealing with the really interesting parts of the logic that we care about, which is that we want to get a record from the product table, get the display URL, and replace HTTP with HTTPS. Let's see how safe navigation can help us. The first and most interesting way it can help us is to deal with a situation when no rows are returned from a SQL query. This is a special extension we've made to the safe navigation concept for Apex. Rather than checking if the return of the so-called query is empty, we can instead use a safe navigation operator to directly access the field we want. The safe navigation operator will return the display URL if a single row is returned, just like the normal dot operator does. But it will also do the equivalent of the isEmpty check. And this whole expression will evaluate to null if no rows are returned. This means we can now remove the isEmpty check and our first line returns the URL directly. The next exceptional case that the safe navigation operator can help with is to eliminate this null check here. Safe navigation directly replicates this check, so you don't have to. So let's do that. We can write after direct URL, safe navigation, then replace. Now what will happen here is if display URL is null, if the field is empty, the expression will evaluate to null and the call to replace is skipped. Otherwise, replace is called and we have a secure URL. And we can now just return the results of this line. So let's be generous and format this nicely. And we've turned an 8-line function where most of the logic is dealing with exceptional cases into a 3-line function where every line is focused on a key requirement of the function. So that's our safe navigation demo. As you can see, safe navigation is a tool that helps us focus on the most important logic and avoids wasting energy on checking for empty results and nulls. Now let's move on to our second new Apex feature, the new SObject error methods. We've added 3 new capabilities. The first is a new variant of add error that lets you choose which field to apply an error to at runtime. This allows you to write generic validation functions and get great UI results, with errors displayed next to the problematic fields. The next 2 methods we added, hasErrors and getErrors, allow you to unit test validation without doing DML. Before, the only way to test validation functions was to do DML on an object and check the save result. This was problematic, as your test had to check the result of all validations on an object, rather than just the validation function you want to test. You had to write integration tests rather than unit tests. With these functions, you can directly verify just the errors added by your validation function. So let's see this in action. For this demo, we'll continue the story of our e-commerce company. We've just deployed a hotfix to production to secure existing URLs using safe navigation, but we want to make sure that all new URLs in our product catalog are also secure. This is a perfect job for a trigger. We'd like to write a trigger that validates URLs and stops a save if URLs are insecure, like this. Here the user has just tried to save the record and was warned that the display URL is insecure. But something interesting has happened in the meantime since our last demo. A new URL field has been added, and we have also caught an insecure URL here. Let's see how this works in practice. Here is our generic validation method that checks that all URL fields are secure on any SObject. It displays an error under each field with an insecure URL. So here's how it works. Given any SObject, we go over each field in the object. We filter those down to URL fields that contain an insecure URL. And then we use a new addError method to set an error message on the precise field containing the insecure URL. Before, a generic validation method would have to display an error at the page level, and the user would have to hunt through the fields to figure out which one was causing the validation issue. So next, let's see how we can use the new hasErrors and getErrors methods to help us unit test our validation function. Here's a unit test for our validation method. Like any test case, it does 3 things. It sets up test data, here with a positive case that should pass validation, and a negative case which we expect to cause a validation error. It then calls our validation method. And then here is where the value of the new methods shine through. Instead of having to test by doing a DML which runs all triggers on the object, we can test the specific results of our validation function, and therefore write a more robust test case. First, we can verify that the SObject has any validation errors at all. And then we verify that exactly 1 error was produced. And finally, we make sure that the 1 error is the error we're expecting on the new manufacturer's URL field, and that it has a message that we expect. So that's a quick look at how the new SObject error methods help you write more powerful, more user-friendly, and better tested validation methods. And that wraps up our Apex demos. You can learn more about these 2 features in the Learn More blogs we've just published. and about all the new Apex features in the Winter 21 release notes. You can find the links for those here. So, thank you for listening, and now on to Alex to talk about Flow.
Thanks, Jared. I'm Alex Edelstein, Product Manager in Salesforce's Automation Group. Flow is an amazing developer platform, and I want to share with you some of its latest developer capabilities, starting with custom property editors. These are available for Lightning Web Components that you use in Flow screens and for your Apex classes that you use as Flow actions. What custom property editors do is they allow you to build actions and screen components that replace the auto-generated property editor that you see here with your own Lightning Web components, so you get full control over the entire user experience. And this is for when users are in Flow Builder and they're actually working with your action or screen component. Now, here are 4 sample components that have been written in open source and published to the community that you can use to see both how you might apply this to a screen component and how you might apply it to a Flow action. And I'll provide a link that you can use to get access to these. So let's dig a little deeper on how to build these. First, I'm going to focus on building them for an invocable action. All you do to connect an LWC to an invocable action is add this new configuration editor property to the invocable method annotation in your Apex code. You can see that it references a namespace component and it calls your Lightning Web component. And the custom property editor, when you do that, will hand you a bunch of data as soon as you initialize. You'll be initializing as soon as someone clicks on the action or screen component in the Flow Builder or Screen Builder canvas. And the Flow Builder will then pass you the full context of the current flow. Especially important there is what the input attributes are, what their types are, and other information that you can use to generate UI in your markup for your component. You can populate your component with any existing values that the user has previously provided. That will also come down from Flow Builder. And you can then enable the user to update their configuration. Whenever they make a change in your LWC, you take that change and fire an event with it so that Flow Builder can update its own internal store of the configuration. Now, it works pretty much the same way if you're adding a custom property editor to a Flow screen. The only real difference is that the configuration editor property here is in the meta XML file in the target config entity. And here you can see the beta documentation and also links to those 4 components that I showed you briefly earlier. So you can see a lot of source code. And when you take a look at these, one of the things you may notice is that they use a community open source library called Flow-based components. That's going to allow you to build custom property editors without having to build things from scratch. For example, there's a Flow combo box, you can see it right here, that will automatically generate this nice pick list of all of the upstream merge fields. And you can focus on the part of the custom property editor that's important to your customers. So let's talk a little bit more about the community. Now, the Flow-based components library that I just showed you, that's a community component. Those are open source and they're written outside of Salesforce. So keep in mind that they're not officially supported products. You'll use them at your own risk. They are, however, really useful tools. And I wanted to share a couple of the most recent innovations that are available as Flow extensions to developers. This is an extension that now allows you to place your flow into your own custom LWC. You can see right here that all you have to do is drop in this component. You can give it a flow name and you can pass some parameters if you want to pass parameters. And the result, well, let's take a look. The flow that I just referenced in that component, that's this little screen flow here. So that's what we want to show inside our custom LWC. Now I'm going to the record page, and you can see here my custom LWC page experience component now has an embedded flow that it is launching and running. So you can work fully with LWC and still take advantage of embedded flows. Now, this uses a whole bunch of crazy sausage making under the covers, visual force pages, iframes. You don't have to worry about any of that. you get to focus on things like adding styling. This is kind of a neat thing you can do here. Put the ScreenFlow component inside a div, and you can pass things like background color in. Here I'm setting the background color to powder blue. I'm going to push that change up to my Scratch organization, and you can see that immediately the flow that I'm launching adopts that styling. So there's some pretty cool things you can do with styling when you embed a flow in your own custom component. Salesforce is working on an official LWC version of Lightning Flow component, but in the meantime, this is very useful. Next thing I want to show you is called Detect and Launch. It's an invisible page component that you can stick on a Lightning page that detects when records are edited and immediately launches a screen flow. So as you know, it's easy to immediately launch a back-end automation. But here you're going to see the value of being able to launch a screen flow. So I'm looking at a case. I've got this invisible component running. I'm going to make an edit. Here's my edit. I'm changing priority to high. I click save, and you can see that immediately a follow-on screen flow has just popped up modally. You can have this modally. You can also launch it in another tab or browser page. You can also specify a separate flow to run when a record is deleted. So here I click the delete button. It asks me to confirm. And you can see that the flow is running. It had to run in a separate tab because there's no more record. You go back here, you can see that that case was completely deleted, but the follow-on flow is running. So how are we doing this? Well, you can see here, this is the invisible page component that I have added. And when I click on it, you can see that it has 3 properties. I dragged it in from the left side. Here are the 3 properties, the 2 different flow names that I can provide, and the launch mode, which can be modal or modeless. The next thing I want to show you, it's called Date Matcher. It extends the granularity of scheduled triggered flows. You can run scheduled triggered flows every day, but if you want to do something like the 3rd Wednesday of each month, Date Matcher can help you get there. It provides an extra filter that returns true or false depending on whether your more granular condition happens to be met today, giving you the chance to decide whether to proceed or quit. And incidentally, in the upper right there, what you can see, yet another custom property editor providing those radio buttons and pick lists. This package provides actions that let you store into the platform cache and get from the platform cache. And you can do this to temporarily persist information across different flows. Here in this diagram, I'm actually using them back to back, and you probably would never use it that way. The real value here is when you want to persist a little information in a high performance way, and you don't want to create or save records. So that's quite effective. Platform cache now accessible to your applications. The final thing I'm going to show you today, super powerful. Flow Test Builder will automatically generate Apex test classes for your flows. So what you're seeing on the left here is you run Test Builder, you select a target flow. In the center, you get to specify the input values you want to provide for your test, and then the expressions that you want to check when the test is complete. Once that's done, this flow actually generates and deploys fully valid Apex test classes, which you can then assign to your CI/CD. And that really can become useful. Let's say it's a year later. Somebody with the best of intentions takes this flow, this target flow, makes a change. They try and deploy it, but they've broken something that you had running. This test is going to fail, the deployment's going to stop, and you're going to get notified. So it helps you add great robustness. Here's a couple of locations where you can find a lot of the source code that the ecosystem is creating, a lot of samples, useful extensions. You can see over there on the right, multiple pull requests coming in. We encourage developers to extend all of the different extensions that Flow has made available. And that's all for today. Heather, back to you for Q&A.
We actually have a special extra expert joining us that wasn't part of the earlier presentation. Chris Peterson, you want to give yourself an introduction?
Absolutely. Good morning. My name is Chris Peterson. We didn't have enough Chris's on the call, so we added one more. I am the product manager for Apex, and so I work with Jared quite heavily on the day-to-day side of things, and am here to answer any questions, roadmap, etc. for Apex.
Perfect. That'll be awesome. That'll really flesh out all of the engineering expertise that Jared's going to provide for us throughout this Q&A. All right, so I want to get started with a really fun question because Chris Harrison, I have seen your TDX presentation and we just saw this most recent API demo and you talk about surfing a lot, so I have to know, do you surf?
I wish I did. I took a lesson last year, but I need to get back out there and gear up so I can surf these waves in my neighborhood.
Yeah, I know you live in a great place for it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, now that we've gotten that out of the way, and I feel like my curiosity has been satisfied, let's check out some of the questions that are coming in from Twitter at Salesforce Live. I have it up there in case you forget. So let's see. The first one I'm seeing is actually, Neha, it's for you about custom metadata types. So when would I create a custom metadata type standalone?
So by standalone, if you mean without having to use a template from an S object, like a custom object or a custom setting, yeah, you can do that from the command line as well. You can use the basic CMDT create command to create it standalone. And because you asked when, well, custom metadata types records are metadata and S objects records are data. So you would want to create them when you have application configurations that you want to move around between orgs, between environments. Do you want custom relationships between different custom metadata or custom objects? That's when you would want to use a custom metadata type.
Okay, brilliant.
I do want some more clarification on what that standalone means. Sorry for interrupting you. So I will follow up on that Twitter thread.
Yeah, so Nadita_codes, we will follow back up with you, we promise. All right, and let's see. So this actually happened a few seconds ago. We were all chatting before we went live. And Chris, we have a question for you from Alex that was, how composite graph retrieval, how does it impact our limits?
So the daily allocated API request limit, when you make a call to composite graph, that one request comprised of n number of sub requests will only count towards that limit as one request.
Okay, great. And so it doesn't actually ever impact SOQL limits because it's an API request.
Correct.
Perfect. All right. And then I have another follow-up from you, and this one actually comes to us from the Trailblazer community. And people are wondering, right now, a lot of people in the ecosystem are talking about GraphQL, and then you have this new Graph API. Can you tell us what the differences are between these two products?
Sure. So the composite graph is one of Salesforce's many REST APIs. And its specific request and response shape follows that of a structure that allows for modeling relationships between objects as graphs. GraphQL, on the other hand, is a query and data manipulation language. It's an API specification. It's a suite of tools that operates over a single endpoint. So this is a different class of API or a different framework. And it's something that Salesforce is exploring, but the two are very different in their composition and their capabilities. So that's how I would answer that.
Awesome. And I think we could follow back up on that one too and link out to some handy resources that are really going to tell you more about what GraphQL is as well. Okay, so let's go ahead and I'm looking around. And Alex, I have a question for you. I'm a traditional clicks or code, not clicks developer, so I'm not very familiar with Flow. Where can I get started?
Well, that's a great question. We have some great tutorials that are available, many of which have been created by members of the Flow HANA, the Flow community. There is an aggregation page you may want to look at. It's on a community site called unofficialsf.com. And if you go there and click on the big Flow box, you will see a Getting Started link that will take you to a page full of tutorials. So there's just a tremendous amount of, here's how you can get started.
Awesome. That sounds great. And I need to check that out myself. So thank you.
And of course, I would be remiss if forgive me for interrupting you, Heather, I would be remiss if I didn't mention Trailhead. If you just go to trailhead.salesforce.com, we have a large set of flow-related trailheads right there as well. And they've got great hands-on ways that you can immediately get your hands dirty building flows.
And you can get feedback on if that flow is working how you're expecting it to because of our hands-on challenges, which I know I find incredibly useful.
Get those points.
And the points, that's true, Chris. All right, so let's hop over to our Apex team, Chris and Jared. Matt, is there anything else noteworthy for Winter 21 coming with Apex that we didn't cover yet?
Yeah, absolutely. So we talked about the things that the Apex team did, but Salesforce is really a joint venture between a whole bunch of teams at the end of the day. And a bunch of other teams did a ton of work that really impacts Apex that I can't take credit for as much as I'd love to. My personal favorite would be that Apex callouts now support HTTP patch. That's been a gap for quite a while. The platform events team actually fixed that up for us. So thank you to everybody from that team for doing that. They also did something else really interesting, was added the ability to fire a platform event from Apex without it counting as DML. Some caveats apply about the type of event. Check the release notes for the full details. But the fact that you can now fire a platform event without it counting as DML means that you can do this before a call out, which is really useful for something like custom logging frameworks. So there's also another really interesting thing of custom notifications. So you can now send those Lightning notifications that show up under the bell in Lightning Experience from Apex. So really great effort from a number of teams to pull together a lot of new features for Apex developers. So check the release notes. There's more than just what we covered here.
I did not know about that notification from Apex. That's exciting. I can think of a couple use cases where I could go use that.
I know our customers love when the release notes show up, and I love getting the draft release notes just as much. So, wow, awesome. I didn't even know that was coming.
Totally. All right, so we have another question here. And this is about the example that was shown for the Apex code. So if product ID is null, will there still be a query?
Yeah, so I can take that.
Perfect.
Yeah. So if product ID is null, the SQL query will return no results, and that's just existing Apex functionality. So the value that the safe navigation operator brings is that after we get no results back, then we handle that in a clean way, in a clean, safe way using the operator.
Okay, so there is still a query. It does still run. It just returns null.
It just returns no results.
That's super helpful to know as we're thinking about our query limits. Okay, the next one I have here, not a question, but a nice call out. Someone on Twitter wants to thank you both for the safe navigation operator because it's going to reduce the size of their code base by a significant percentage. So thank you for giving us this great ad, really reducing the lines of code that we need to use to do some really important code.
I think Eric will agree. There's nothing better as a developer than deleting code. A pull request where it's all red is the best pull request.
Okay, so Neha, we're coming back to you. Can you use the CLI to insert metadata type records in a sandbox instead of a scratch org?
Yeah, so primarily CLI commands are for the scratch org. We have something coming up from the metadata side, which is called source tracking, and you will be very soon able to source track all of your code in sandboxes as well in a multi-developer environment.
Okay, that's super helpful. And one more question for you. What about the custom metadata loader? Is that sticking around or what's happening with that?
So custom metadata loader, I want to clarify, is not a Salesforce owned and maintained tool. So it might still be there. We are nobody to let it go of. But with the CLI plugin, you can actually start holding us accountable, create investigations if an issue occurs, and expect us to resolve those. So CMDT loader is still going to be around for as long as the developers who developed it want, but it would be helpful for all of you. It would be great if you can jump on the CLI bandwagon. But
Awesome. And let's see here. Sorry, scrolling through, trying to make sure we get everything here. We have a question coming in about Launchpad LWC and wanting to know where that comes from. None of us here on this call are an expert on that, so we will get back to you via the Twitterverse. This next one, let's see here. Sorry, there's so many good questions. It's hard to figure out which one to ask next. So let's go ahead with this one for our Apex team. Why would I use has errors over get errors?
Short answer, performance. Checking if a list contains something is a lot faster than iterating through the list and returning a full collection. So if you just want to know if, can I save this S object successfully, or does it have errors at the moment, check has errors instead of bothering with enumerating the list and then checking if it's empty as two separate operations. You'll save yourself a tiny bit of CPU time, but you'll also save yourself a method call. So our big theme is developer convenience and not writing more code than you have to. And it costs us basically nothing to throw it in there. So we did.
Great. All right, next question. Alex, this one's for you. Thank you for the quick choice FSC. They're already using it in their production org and for their support cases, and they love it. And I guess it's just a shout out. It's not a question. But thank you.
It's great to hear. What you'll be pleased to know is that some of the problems that Quick Choice, which is a community extension that improves pick lists and radio button groups and flow screens, some of the gaps that it addresses are being worked on by the internal official flow team, and we are committed to making those improvements to the out-of-the-box capabilities of flow.
Awesome. All right, Chris Harrison, let's go back to you. What can I do with the Composite Graph API that I can't already do with all of the other amazing REST APIs?
Yeah, so Graph is another addition to the existing Composite REST resource family. And its shape is slightly different than the other composite resources in that sub-requests are allowed to be organized into graphs. Graphs of related records that belong to one another. So there's an organizing principle that is reflected in the request and the response shape. In addition, you can work on more records than is allowed presently in Composite. So difference between 25 sub-requests and 500, which is allowed in Graph. And then lastly, Graph has a more confined list of operations that are allowed. So for example, you can't issue a SOQL query through the query REST resource in Composite Graph. Graph is all about CRUD operations on S objects. So it's a little bit tighter set of capabilities. So best thing to do is to refer to the developer guide that's available on the developer site, and you can get up to speed on all the capabilities and differences right there.
Perfect. And I love that. Shout out to developer.salesforce.com.
Love the docs.
Gotta love them. All right, we have another flow question. Really excited about this one. So for the flow updates, would the flow to create Apex tests also work to create a test for Process Builder?
Let's see. Right now, out of the box, it's not going to do that because process builder processes don't really return values in the same way. However, it wouldn't probably take much to extend Flow Test Builder to be able to test process builders. What you have to do when you're building an automation, when you're building test automation, there's really two parts. There's for every test you want to create, there's, hey, what are the inputs I'm going to provide? And then what is the thing I check to see if my process or my flow worked the way I expected it to. So with a flow, you can get some return values and check those very easily. With Process Builder, it would be a little more freeform. But if there's interest in that, then over on unofficialsf.com, there's a comment area that can be you can create comments on the page for that particular extension. Let us know what you want, and maybe someone in the community will be able to extend it.
Okay. That sounds great, and I love the idea of the community working together to solve that problem. All right, this next question is a little bit long, so let me read it out loud. Someone is asking this because they've recently used custom settings for merge fields in email templates and custom buttons. They want to know if they need to stop using custom settings and switch over to custom metadata, or if settings is still the only answer for merge fields. Neha, that one's to you. Do you want me to
Sorry,
try one?
yeah, can you repeat the question?
Yeah, totally. So if, should we stop using custom settings and switch over to custom metadata, or do we still need settings to do things like custom merge fields and email templates?
Well, I would say that we are making an attempt to move to custom metadata types completely from custom settings. So as early as you can adopt, the better it is for you to move over your code easily to custom metadata types and start using custom metadata types more. I don't see, while we are working to roll out features to bring parity between custom settings and custom metadata types, so I do know that there are some gaps that exist today. You might have to use custom settings for a reason for a reason that will, as of now, does not exist in custom metadata types. But I would say as early as you can start using custom metadata types, you don't have to stick with custom settings. It will eventually go away.
Awesome. So we'll definitely reach back out to that person on Twitter, make sure we understand their full use case and get them the right answer. But it sounds like it's time to start using custom metadata.
Definitely is.
All right. So let's see here. Are there any concerns, this is from my Apex team, that the safe navigation operator is going to actually make my code less readable? My tech lead currently gets frustrated with me when I use ternary operators. I can never say that.
So I can have a go at answering that. I've gone through a lot of code on the Salesforce platform since we have a lot of code internally, a lot of Apex code internally, and I've looked for use cases where the safe navigation operator could have been used. I've converted them to use safe navigation operator, and almost exclusively I've seen that the explicit null checks really makes code less readable than just using the safe navigation operator. I think there are caveats, like you obviously don't want excessively long lines, you want to break up lines and so on. But overall, I feel it's a net win. And a great question. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, there is too much of a good thing. You can abuse anything. I've abused ternary in my past. I've been clean for a few years. I haven't abused ternary in a while, but I've been guilty of the same thing in the past, mostly to abuse the statement limit, but that was long ago. We'll forget about that. And in the Learn More post that's kind of accompanying this, I actually put an example of too much safe navigation in one line of code that made it harder to read, backed it out a little bit into two statements for readability, and that turned out to be the sweet spot. So glance over your code before you send it for code review. Make sure that you don't have some crazy long line. Statements aren't a sin, so feel free to break it up. But yeah, it usually is a good thing.
And that blog post that you just mentioned, it literally just went live. So people could go to the developer.salesforce.com/blog and check out all the Learn More posts that dive into all these features and more. All right, one more question for the two of you. Are there any major restrictions on the use of the safe navigation operator?
Nope. It's generally available. It's ready to go. Sorry, there is one. There is one place where it's restricted right now, and that is in bind variables in SOCL. So if you're using a bind expression in Apex in a SOCL query, you cannot use safe navigation currently. We're looking at a couple of different things around syntax for bind expressions that we might want to change, so we wanted to reserve the flexibility there. And also, a lot of the time you're binding a variable, not a full expression. So it seemed like it was an area of questionable utility right off the bat. So that's the only constraint. It is GA, it is ready to go. We can't really pilot language features effectively, so we just made sure it was ready and put it out there.
Awesome. Okay, and then we have a fun question that has come in. And I guess we can ask it of all of you. Have you been checking out my bookshelf and is it too distracting? We've got, it's come in a few times, so. All right, let's go ahead and go to the next question. This one, I believe, is for you, Alex. So can you tell us more about the documentation that's related to detect and launch, and related to that, for detect and launch, can you set criteria to launch on only specific edits?
Let's see. I mean, as far as documentation goes, it's a pretty simplistic little component. And if you go to, if you go back and look, you'll see the website's there. You can go take a look, see for yourself. And if there's anything that's not clear, just post a comment. Right now, it's in its sort of V1 incarnation. It simply treats all edits the same. But keep in mind that what you're doing is you're launching a flow. What can you do with a flow? Well, you can the first thing you can do is pass in the record ID of the record that was just edited, and then you can make decisions and do filtering. So you could have your flow say, if let me request this record and get all of its fields, and then based on certain conditions, immediately exit without ever showing a screen. The user would never even, most likely, really even realize that that flow had been launched because it would quit immediately. Whereas if it met the conditions you wanted, you could go on and so forth. So we've sort of deliberately tried to keep the detection and launch part of it slim, knowing that in your flow you can do what you want to configure it. But as is the case with all of these extensions, we're looking for feedback. Tell us how you want it improved.
Okay, awesome. And then our questions are slowing down, but I do have one more, and this one is back to you, Neha. And I think it's just that they may have already missed this, but can you update custom metadata values in the CLI?
Yep. So while there is no direct command to do that, you can do anything you can do with the metadata, right? So you can, you have the record created, you have its metadata file, you can go edit and then deploy and update a record, just like any other metadata.
Okay. And then if I was to do the migration that you talked about, does that work with hierarchical custom settings?
No, I know that's a favorite question, but no, it does not. It is complicated to get it working with hierarchical custom settings, and we did not want to hold back the plugin just because it doesn't work with that. So it's a complicated solution. We're thinking about it, but as of now, no.
Okay. And then just continuing to build off of that earlier comment about custom settings versus custom metadata, can we expect that the limits are going to increase on custom metadata types?
In the long range plan, yes. In the short term, like next few releases, no, it's not on our short-term roadmap because it involves a bunch of performance analysis before we actually go ahead and increase that limit for everybody. But it is something in our list of to-do things.
Okay. Perfect. I'm seeing It looks like we've got about 10 minutes left, and I've got one more question left that I have seen come in, so we'll keep going. And this one is a final one for our little Apex team. Are there any limits on when or where any of these features that you talked about today, which are a bunch of them, are available?
No, we actually didn't version the new methods on SObject. There wasn't a reason that we needed to version them. I do generally suggest that you use the current API version 50, when doing these, because that's where the majority of the testing happened. But that's where we've tested the best. You can definitely use them on older API versions if you want to. Same thing with the navigation operator. And all of it's GA. There's no constraints. Anywhere you can author and distribute Apex. So if you're an ISV partner, feel free to package it. It'll run in professional editions. It'll run if it's part of an app exchange package. If you have an enterprise edition or up org, no constraints. Go wild.
That's exciting. Perfect. Thank you so much to everyone today who has hung out with us and learned a lot from this Release Readiness Live broadcast. We hope that you have enjoyed what we've said so far and that you want to continue to learn even more. You can do that by visiting sforce.co/learnmore to see the 5 vlogs we've released this week about these features, as well as the updates that came to the Salesforce toolset. And if you go through and you complete that trail mix at that link before October 30th, then you can actually go ahead and unlock a custom badge for you on Trailhead. So please check that out. #LearnMore on Twitter, and come learn with us about everything new in this release. And with that, I'd like to say thank you all very much. We hope you have a wonderful rest of your day and that you stick around for the Admin Preview Live coming up next.